I'm Emily Mashak, and you are listening to Tuned In to NoCo, Town Square Media's show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. I'm sitting down today with Kari Clark, the Executive Director of Alternatives to Violence, and we're here to talk about their 4th annual Purple Ribbon Breakfast. So thank you for coming in today, Kari.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, before we get into the event, for those who aren't aware, what is Alternatives to Violence?
Well, Alternatives to Violence is an agency. We're located in Loveland. We offer shelter, resources, advocacy, and education for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. We started off in 1982 as the Task Force for Battered Women. And as times have evolved, we changed our name to Alternatives to Violence because we don't just help battered women. We're kind of all around. We help all identifying genders, anybody who needs help.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of programs you offer?
So we do have a shelter. It's an 8-bedroom, 22-bed shelter, emergency shelter for people who are escaping abusive relationships and need a safe place to stay. We also offer advocacy both to our shelter clients as well as we have a non-residential program. So if there are people who have experienced abuse, whether it is domestic violence or sexual assault or human trafficking, they can come in and get help and resources that they need. So oftentimes people do have help. They have a safe place to go to, family, friends in town. So they may not need our shelter, but they do need help guiding through the process, whether that be protection orders or somebody to go with them and advocate with them in court hearings against things, fill out paperwork. We do address confidentiality program in case they need to have their address not published anywhere. So all those things were there for them on their way. We also offer education. So we go into the Thompson School District and present to most 9th grade classes on teen dating violence so that teens can really be aware of what's appropriate, not appropriate in dating and avoid violence that way. And I think it really helps teaching them things to watch out for. And we offer community events where parents of teens can come in. We had one recently a month ago for teen dating violence specifically, where parents could come in and we could teach them things to watch for with their kids and who they're dating and what's going on in that world. So we also do corporate presentations, things like that, just really to spread awareness on domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking.
Mm-hmm. How did you find your way to the organization?
That's a good question. I actually got into it. I've been working in nonprofits for about 15 years. And prior to working in domestic violence, I lived in Idaho and worked for a substance abuse prevention organization. And we had a very strong partnership with the domestic violence agency in Idaho. And when I moved down here, I had been so passionate about it up there that I really wanted to follow in nonprofit, but work with domestic violence. It's amazing how substance abuse, homelessness, and domestic violence all go hand in hand. And we work very closely with other agencies here in Loveland and in Larimer County as well. We have great collaboration between them all that we can help each other and offer resources for clients that we all have.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now let's get to the event, the 4th annual Purple Ribbon Breakfast. What is it?
It is an awareness breakfast. It is also a fundraising breakfast. It is a free breakfast for the members of the community. Anybody who can attend or wants to attend can attend. This year, we have a speaker, Mildred Muhammad, and Mildred was the ex-wife of the DC sniper. So younger people may not remember, although I guess that was about 15 years or so that happened. And there was a gentleman, John Muhammad, in Washington, D.C., who for a few weeks terrorized the area. Nobody knew who it was. They just knew that there were sniper shootings. He would hide out behind a car, and all of a sudden, people would be shot. And it really terrorized the area. And what the FBI discovered after they arrested him was that his final target was his ex-wife. He wanted to murder her, so he was former military, had the knowledge and the equipment, and he thought, if I go do these murders, these snipers, where people won't know who's doing it, by the time I can shoot my ex-wife, they'll think it's just part of the sniper who's out there getting people. So she tells a great story. She's written some books and does lots of speaking and advocacy on domestic violence and education to show people what it's like to live with somebody who has power over your life. And really, domestic violence is centered around power and control. And he tried to keep that control even after she finally had the guts to leave. So in the breakfast, we will get to hear from her for a while. We'll hear from another survivor speaker who is local. And it's free food, and it should be a great learning environment for people who want to learn more about domestic violence and hear an engaging speaker.
Definitely. What time is it at? How can people go and things like that?
That's the lovely part. So for people who work and normally can't leave, it's a nice early breakfast. So the breakfast will begin at 7:30. We have check-in at 7. So the program will begin at 7:30 and will be over by 9. So people can watch the program and get up and head on out to their jobs or wherever they need to be. They can register online. The web address is long as I put it on there, but I actually will give it to you. It's not that bad. It's Eventbrite. It can be done by a search, but it is at atv-purpleribbonbreakfast.eventbrite.com, and anybody can register there on free and come to the event.
That is great. I'm sure it'll be a lovely event. And I want to just talk a little bit more about ATV in general. Can you just walk me through, if someone comes to ATV, what is that process going to be like for them? Like, walk me through the steps once you reach out.
That's a great question. And it, again, depends on whether they have a safe situation to go to or not. So if they are calling and coming in and needing shelter, we'll bring them in and sit down and do an intake process and figure out what's going on and what they need. And people who are in trauma have a hard time knowing what's kind of going on or understanding and wanting the problem solved right away. And we know that that's not always going to happen. So we deal with their trauma. All of our advocates are trauma-informed trained. So they understand it's meeting with immediate crisis. And sometimes that immediate crisis is, I need a roof over my head. We can talk about the rest later. A lot of our clients that come in are families. We had approximately 190 people stay in our shelter last year, and about 50% of those were children.
Wow.
So kids are affected by this. We will separate the kids. We have a youth advocate, so she'll take the kids if they're coming in, and we'll interview the parent and see what they need. And first and foremost, make sure they have a safe place to stay. And we have case managers who will work with them from that point forward and take it by step. We work with them on goals. The initial goal might be making it through the next couple of nights without crying all night long. And we really listen to where they're at and work on if they're going to need a permanent place to be housed. If they have somewhere safe to go, a lot of times we'll relocate people to other states if they have family in other states but don't have the means because their abusive partner kept hold of their checkbook or they had no financial control, which is a very common abusive tactic with partners, is to hold financial control, isolate people from their family and friends. So a lot of the women and men who come in have been isolated from those that love them. We help get them reconnected and maybe help them out financially with going where they need to go. And the same thing can happen with people who may not need shelter. They may have the means but aren't sure what to do. Do they need a protection order? How do I even get a protection order? So we will help them navigate that and help fill out paperwork that goes along with that, refer them to other resources like local counseling. We do have counseling in-house for our safe house and former safe house residents for free for them where they can come do counseling. But if people need longer term therapy, we will refer them to Summit Stone or Heart-Centered Counseling or somewhere else, really just to make sure they're getting what they need to go through the system. A lot of abusers have been arrested. One of our programs that we have too is called our Victim Response Team. And we actually have a partnership with the Loveland Police Department. We also work with Larimer County and a few other of the law enforcement agencies, as well as MCR, as the hospitals, that they can call us 24/7 and we will send an advocate out to help victims. So if they have been in an abusive situation and the officers come and they make an arrest and they want an advocate, the LPD will call us and we send somebody out immediately just to help guide them through the process. And it can be really overwhelming. When you're in crisis and in a situation like that, it's amazing how they can feel. So our advocates will help guide them, let them know how the process will work, let them know how bond will work for the abusive partner if there was an arrest made. We do have staff, our advocates will go to the bond hearings to see how it's working and what's going on, and then help really file paperwork and just along the entire process. We also have a housing program as well. So people who do need to find permanent housing, we help them do that.
Yeah, that's great that you guys are such a support system in something that's so hard for so many people.
Absolutely.
Going a little more general for people who aren't familiar or aren't educated about the topic, what qualifies as abuse? Is it physical, emotional, both?
It is all of the above. I'll add a few onto that as well. In fact, physical abuse, people have the impression that to be in domestic violence situation, you have to be physically abused. But there's a great tool out there that can be Googled and looked up. It's called the Power and Control Wheel. And it talks about how really the definition of domestic violence and abuse is power and control. And the final area that can be goes into physical abuse. And unfortunately, sometimes it goes from physical abuse to lethality, to death. So there are many different types of abuse. As I mentioned previously, financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, meaning in a relationship, holding power and control and manipulating partners for sexual gain, religious abuse, using religion to control somebody. And it really, the emphasis is about power and control. As I mentioned previous, one of the red flags as well is isolation. If somebody that you know is with their partner and you see that they're isolating them, they're not letting them go visit their family or hang out with their friends, that's a problem. And those areas can lead to further abuse, which then goes into the physical abuse.
Right. Can you talk a little more about warning signs? You mentioned that one of them is not letting them hang out with their friends. What are some of the other things to look out for? Isolation.
If you yourself are, if you're being treated with power, if he's sweet to you, but then he blows up and then comes back and is super sweet, I'll never do it again, that can be a problem. So really holding control over you. Again, isolation being the most. If you notice somebody's personality is changing with their partner, your loved one, your friend, your daughter, anything like that, if the person that they're with is causing them to be quiet and not speak up. If you notice they don't spend any money, they don't have their own money. So-and-so, my husband said I can't buy those things like that. Those are all red flags to watch out for. So, and we do have these on our website as well. Anybody can look up if they're concerned about a loved one, friend, or somebody that they know being in an abusive situation. They can always give us a call as well, and we can help guide them if that's normal or not normal.
Mm-hmm. So if they do suspect that a loved one is being abused, they can call you guys?
Absolutely. And I've have it happen quite often where, hey, I've been noticing that my friend's husband is doing this. Is this something we can be concerned about? And what can we do if they are? A lot of times what's really hard for loved ones and friends is the person being abused can't accept it. So sometimes you can talk to them about where things are, but the most important thing is to let them know that you're there for them. Never telling somebody, why don't you just leave? Why can't you just leave? Unfortunately, it's very hard. The national average for people leaving an abusive relationship permanently is 7 to 10 times. They leave, they may go back. Many reasons for that. They may truly love their partner. They may have children. It might be financial. And what they need from their support system is understanding and to be there with them. If somebody were to call us in a situation or somebody that they know, we can also help with safety planning. We don't expect that people should just get up and leave. In fact, nobody should expect that people should just leave. Even if they're in an obvious abusive relationship, it can be very difficult. There are also the time when somebody leaves an abusive relationship is also the most dangerous. So we need to watch out for them if they leave. That's when their abusive partner gets very angry and may do things that you don't expect, may come after them more often. So we do safety planning, preparing for leaving.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's way more of a bigger picture than just calling it quits.
Absolutely. Way more.
Well, it is amazing that you are here to help people through that. If someone wants to also help, can they volunteer or donate with Alternatives to Violence?
Absolutely. So on our website, which is alternativestoviolence.org, we have our volunteer opportunities. We depend a lot on volunteers. All of our services, every single one of our services that we offer are free. We don't charge anybody anything. And more often than not, like I said, we will help with transportation to another state. We will help with cell phones if they've had to give up their cell phones, and just the work that we do. So we have volunteer positions, anything around office work to actually working with clients. We do a full training working with clients. We have our victim response team is really heavily volunteer. So those people who go out on the calls and are there for support, a lot of those positions that we have are volunteer. So we do a 40-hour training for that. And it's a good way to get in and see how things go. We also, of course, take donations because that helps us keep open and keep help for those people. And those can be made online as well.
That's awesome. Well, Thank you so much, Kari, for coming in and talking to me about this. It was great to learn about your organization and help people be aware of what to look out for in situations like this. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you having us.
Again, that was Kari Clark, the Executive Director of Alternatives to Violence. If you would like to attend their 4th annual Purple Ribbon Breakfast on April 2nd at the Embassy Suites in Loveland, you can visit eventbrite.com and search for Purple Ribbon Breakfast. For more information about Alternatives to Violence, visit alternativestoviolence.org.